What are some of the best paradox you know? Story 1: paradoxes usually contain a hidden truth, even when they sound self defeating. A classic one: I'm a compulsive liar. Now, what do you believe? If they're lying, then maybe they're telling the truth. But if they're telling the truth, they must be lying. It creates a logic loop, a paradox. This kind of mental trap shows up in real life too. In court, for example, a witness might say, I lied to the police. The natural response: wait, so are you lying about lying? Instead of figuring it out, juries often just throw up their hands and disregard the person entirely. It's not about who's right, it's about how impossible it becomes to trust any part of the story. That's the power of a paradox. It doesn't need to be false, just impossible to prove either way. Story 2: a judge tells a prisoner he'll be hanged at noon on one weekday next week, but the exact day will be a surprise. The prisoner starts thinking, it can't be Friday, he says, because if I'm alive by Thursday night, Friday won't be a surprise. So he crosses Friday off the list, then Thursday's out too. If Friday's ruled out, Thursday becomes obvious the night before. Using the same logic, he eliminates Wednesday, Tuesday, and even Monday. Eventually, the prisoner convinces himself there's no possible day he could be hanged. But then, on Wednesday at noon, the executioner knocks, and it's a complete shock. Every part of the judge's promise was true. The hanging was during the week, and it was unexpected. The paradox: the more the prisoner tried to logically eliminate possibilities, the more he blinded himself to reality. He couldn't see the outcome because his reasoning made him believe it couldn't exist. Story 3: imagine you meet an alien who can predict the future with absolute accuracy. It offers you a choice between two boxes. One is transparent and clearly contains $10. The other is sealed and may contain $100 or nothing. The deal is this: if you take both boxes, the alien will have predicted it and left the sealed box empty. If you take only the sealed box, you'll get the full $100. Then the alien leaves. Decision time. Now you think, the alien's gone, the boxes are already packed, whatever I choose won't change what's inside. So logically, you should take both boxes and get whatever's in them. But then again, you know the alien always predicts correctly. If you take both, you'll only walk away with $10. If you take just the sealed box, you get the 100. So what do you trust more? Logic or perfect foresight? This is Newcomb's paradox. It isn't just about choosing between boxes, it's about whether you believe your future is already decided and whether your choices even matter if someone already knows them. Story 4: the universe includes everything: space, time, matter, and yet it's expanding. But expanding into what? At first, it sounds like it's stretching outward into some giant void, but that's misleading. A common metaphor is a balloon. Imagine its surface expanding. The balloon skin grows, but it doesn't need to expand into anything. The surface itself just stretches. In the same way, our universe expands not into empty space, but by creating space as it grows. There's no edge or border, there's no outside, just more space forming between everything already inside. That's why the balloon metaphor can be confusing. People imagine the inside or outside of the balloon as being relevant, but in reality, there is no exterior. The universe is not moving through space, it is space. The paradox is this: our minds want to picture boundaries and destinations, but in cosmic terms, there may be neither. Space doesn't expand into something, it becomes the expansion itself. Story 5: Achilles, the fastest man in ancient Greece, gives a turtle a 10-meter head start in a race. He runs 10 times faster, so overtaking the turtle should be easy, right? Not according to Zeno, a philosopher who loved logic puzzles. He said Achilles can never pass the turtle. Because first Achilles must reach the turtle's starting point, but by the time he gets there, the turtle has moved forward slightly. Then Achilles has to reach that new point, and again the turtle moves a bit ahead. This continues infinitely. Every time Achilles reaches where the turtle was, the turtle has gone a little farther. So Achilles is always just behind. Of course, in reality, Achilles easily passes the turtle. Zeno's point wasn't to argue against movement, but to highlight how dividing space and time into infinite steps can confuse our understanding of motion. The paradox is simple but deep. How can an infinite number of steps add up to something finite? Turns out they can. thanks to the math of converging series, but it still messes with your intuition. Story 6 in the Terminator 1984. Humanity is at war with machines in the year 2029. John Connor leads the human resistance. To stop him, the machines send a Terminator back in time to kill his mother, Sarah Connor, before he's even born. The humans respond by sending back one of their own, Kyle Reese, to protect her. Kyle and Sarah fall in love and she becomes pregnant with John. They destroy the Terminator, but Kyle dies in the process. Here's the paradox. John only exists because he sent Kyle back in time, but Kyle is his father. So if John never existed in the first place, he couldn't have sent Kyle back, which means Sarah wouldn't have had John at all. It's a classic time loop, one where the cause and effect feed into each other endlessly. John creates the conditions for his own birth by acting from a future that wouldn't exist without him. Is it a paradox, a plot hole, maybe both? But it raises the same unsettling question as all good time travel stories. Can the future shape the past? And if so, who started the loop? Story 7 in the game Legacy of Kain, the character Raziel recounts a chilling moment of realization. As his journey unfolds, he senses a strange bond with the wraith blade he carries, a blade that once had another form. Eventually, the blade reacts to its counterpart and fuses with it. But as it does, something horrifying becomes clear. The soul trapped in the blade was his own. That's why he never felt its presence when it was first offered to him. That's why it shattered when Cain tried to strike him down. The blade, forged to devour souls, couldn't consume its own. Raziel was, and always had been, the entity inside the weapon. It's not just poetic, it's a closed loop of identity, fate, and memory. Raziel's destiny was to carry the blade that contained his past self, and in trying to escape that fate, he fulfilled it. The paradox here is deeply personal. He becomes the very thing he tried to destroy, locked in an eternal cycle of cause and consequence. It's not just fantasy storytelling, it's a metaphor for identity, purpose, and the terrifying idea that some fates may be inescapable. Story 8 in Catch 22, a character wants to be grounded, removed from combat duty because he's afraid of dying. That's a pretty rational fear, but there's a catch. If he asks to be grounded, it proves he's sane. And if he's sane, he has to keep flying missions. The only way out is to be crazy. But the moment you try to escape by claiming insanity, you're clearly not insane, so you're stuck. If you are crazy, you can't prove it without showing rational concern. And if you're sane enough to be afraid, you're sane enough to stay in combat. This circular logic is what the book calls Catch 22. It's a paradox where every escape route loops back to the trap you're trying to avoid. The brilliance of the paradox isn't just in the logic, it's in how it mirrors real-world bureaucracy. The more you try to get out, the deeper in you go, and the more you fight it, the more it proves their point. It's madness, perfectly disguised as rules. Story 9. Let's say you have an axe. Nothing fancy, just one from a hardware store. One cold night, you use it to chop off the head of a very dead, but possibly undead, man. Even with multiple bullet wounds, you don't trust he's staying down. On the final swing, the handle snaps. Later, you go to the store, replace the handle, and now the axe sits in your garage until spring. Then, one day, you discover a monster in your kitchen, something slug-like with metal-biting jaws. Naturally, you grab the axe and destroy it, but in the process, the blade chips on your table. You get a new blade, attach it to the same handle, and store it again. Eventually, the reanimated corpse of the original guy returns, stitched up and angry. He sees your axe and says, "That's the same weapon that killed me." Here's the question. Is he right? The handle is new, the blade is new. Nothing is physically the same, but the idea of the axe, its continuity, lives on. This paradox plays with identity. At what point does something stop being itself? If every part is replaced over time, is it still the same object, or just a replica pretending to be the original? Story 10. Imagine an old wooden ship made of 100 planks. Over time, one of the boards rots and is replaced, then another and another. Eventually, all 100 planks were replaced. Now ask yourself, is it still the same ship? Most people say yes at first. But what if someone gathered all the original discarded planks and rebuilt the ship separately? Now we have two ships, one with all new materials and one made from the old pieces. Which one is the real ship of Theseus? This paradox challenges how we define identity. Is something the same because of its form and function, or is it tied to its original parts? And if identity can persist through total physical change, what really makes something or someone what they are? It applies to people too. If you replace every cell in your body over time, which you do, are you still the same person? If your memories shift or your personality changes, does your core identity remain intact? This ancient puzzle isn't just about boats, it's about how we understand continuity, memory, and the meaning of self. Story 11. A man is orphaned young and raised by a nanny who's hard of hearing. Through a misunderstanding, she accidentally apprentices him to a pirate crew instead of a pilot's guild. Bound by a bizarre contract, he's told he'll be freed on his 21st birthday. But here's the twist. He was born on February 29th, leap day. So technically, his birthday only comes around once every 4 years. By the calendar, he's a grown adult, but by birthday count, he's only 5. This comes to light just as he's trying to leave the pirates behind and start a new life. Suddenly, his captors, including the nanny, claim he still owes years of service. Legally, they might be right. Logically, it's absurd. Emotionally, it's a nightmare. Fortunately, things are resolved by a comical case of mistaken identity. But the paradox remains. When the rules are tied to time, what happens when time itself plays tricks? It's a whimsical story, but it raises real questions about contracts, age, and how we define milestones in a world built on imperfect systems. Story 12. A man dedicates his life to uncovering the secret of time travel. Years of research yield nothing. Then one day, his future self appears. That version of him, older and wiser, presents a mysterious box. Inside is a working time machine. Stunned, the younger man asks, "Where did you get this?" The older version responds, "From my future self, just like I'm doing now." And so it goes. Every version of the man gets the time machine from a future version who got it from his future self, and so on. But here's the kicker. No one ever built it. No one invented it. The machine exists in an infinite loop, passed down from future to past without origin. It never began, it just is. This is called a bootstrap paradox. Something exists, but its creation defies logic. Where did the machine come from? Who made it? Answer: no one. It's a self-sustaining loop, a piece of information or tech with no beginning, and it's one of the most mind-bending paradoxes in time travel fiction. Story 13. The skeptics asked, "What if you're being deceived? What if everything you believe is false?" But the philosopher replied, "Even if I am deceived, I must exist. For there to be deception, there must be a me being deceived. If I'm wrong, confused, or tricked, then I still am, because someone must be experiencing that error." This is a twist on Descartes' famous idea. I think, therefore I am. The act of thinking, doubting, or questioning proves there's a self doing the thinking. Even if every belief I hold is false, even if the world around me is an illusion, the very fact that I can reflect on this, that I have conscious awareness, means I exist. So the paradox becomes this: the more you doubt your existence, the more you affirm it. Total skepticism ends in self proof. It's a paradox that comforts philosophers and baffles skeptics. You may not be sure of anything else, but you can be sure that you're here thinking. Even if you're wrong, you exist enough to be wrong. Story 14. A judge tells a prisoner, "You'll be executed next week, but the day will be a surprise." The prisoner thinks it through. If the execution hasn't happened by Friday, then it must happen Saturday. But that wouldn't be a surprise. He'd know the night before. So Saturday's out. Then Friday must be out too, because if it hasn't happened by Thursday, the only possible day left is Friday. Again, no surprise. Following this logic, he eliminates every day of the week. He convinces himself the execution can't happen at all. The judge plays along. "Fine, stay in your cell. You'll be released at week's weekend." Then Tuesday arrives. The executioner shows up. The prisoner is stunned. "Didn't expect that, did you?" says the judge. Paradox complete. Even though the logic seemed airtight, the surprise still happened. The reasoning that eliminated each day made the actual execution unpredictable. Story 15. A man and a woman are conducting a neuroscience experiment while driving through a town. The woman drives and the man carries a small time machine. Their goal? To study how memory works in real time. As they leave the town, the woman realizes she can't remember passing through it. That's the cue. The man sends a signal back in time to the moment they entered the town. He plans to perform the brain scan then on their past selves and send the data forward. But here's where it breaks down. In the future, where they send a signal, the scan never happens because no one in the past ever got the signal. So, what happens? Two timelines form. In one, the past version gets the signal, does the experiment, and sends it forward. In the other, the experiment never occurs because the signal was never sent in the first place. If they don't send the signal, their timeline diverges forever. They've essentially created a branching reality and can never travel back further than the time it took to send the message. It's a looping paradox of intent, memory, and broken cause and effect. And the real question is, what if nobody sends the message at all? Story 16, everyone knows the classic grandfather paradox. Go back in time, kill your grandfather before your parents are born, and you erase your own existence. But then, who went back in time to commit the act? This version explores the dilemma with a darker historical twist. Let's say you travel back intending to stop a certain Austrian painter, the one whose actions started a global war. If you succeed, he never causes the war, so you'd have no reason to travel back and stop him, which means he survives. So you go back, and the cycle continues. To make this more workable, time travelers develop rules, like write yourself a reminder before the mission, or recruit someone born before your target to carry out the job. That way, your own timeline isn't disrupted. Even better, get a third party whose life is completely unaffected by the event to ensure you're born after the deed is done. It's part sci fi, part logic puzzle, and all mind bending. The deeper you dive, the more you realize trying to rewrite the past without undoing your future is a paradox wrapped in paranoia. Happy hunting, time travelers. Story 17. In Southern California, freedom means having a car. It's your ticket to anywhere. Beaches, mountains, city lights, no waiting on buses, no rigid schedules, just the open road. Except, not really. Most of the time, you're stuck in gridlock. Cars stretch endlessly down highways. You crawl along at 10 miles per hour, boxed in by others chasing the same freedom. The road becomes a prison, not an escape. Here's the paradox. You need a car to be free, but everyone having cars is what traps you. It's not quite a classic paradox, more like cruel irony. In sprawling cities without robust public transit, driving is essential. But when everyone drives, mobility collapses. You could walk, you could bike, but few do. The distances are too vast. The infrastructure isn't built for it. So you sit in your freedom box, honking at the irony. Story 18. If a divine being knows everything about your future, every decision, every outcome, do you still have free will? Some argue no. If your actions are already known, they must be predetermined. There's no freedom if the script is already written. Others say yes, but only if you introduce multiverse theory. Maybe every possible choice you could make exists somewhere in some branch. Your path is just one of many, but then is it really free will or just rolling the dice across infinite versions of yourself? Prophecy complicates it further. Say someone tells you you're destined for greatness. You might strive harder to fulfill it, not because of fate, but because you believe it. So, was it destiny or determination? It becomes circular. If an outcome is meant to be, is that because it was inevitable or because your choices led there? The paradox is this. Omniscience and autonomy feel incompatible. One implies certainty, the other choice, and yet maybe they coexist in a way we can't fully grasp. Maybe free will is real, and maybe it always leads exactly where it was destined to go. Story 19. Paradoxes come in different forms. Not all are created equal. First, there's the veridical paradox. This kind seems absurd at first, but actually turns out to be true. Take Simpson's paradox in statistics, where trends appear reversed when data is combined versus when it's separated. It's not a mistake, just counterintuitive. Then there's the falsidical paradox. It looks logical but leads to a false or impossible result. Zeno's paradox, for instance, suggests motion is impossible because it can be infinitely divided. It seems valid until you use calculus to prove the opposite. It's a clever illusion based on bad assumptions. Lastly, we have antinomy, where a rule contradicts itself. Think of the barber paradox. The barber shaves everyone in town who doesn't shave themselves, so who shaves the barber? If he shaves himself, he shouldn't. If he doesn't, he should. The rule collapses under its own logic. So, not all paradoxes are just brain teasers. Some are truths in disguise, some are errors pretending to be wisdom, and some are impossible loops that reveal flaws in our reasoning. Understanding which type you're dealing with can mean the difference between solving a mystery or falling into one. Story 20. One day, a portal opens in your living room. Out steps you, but from the future. Future. You hands you a stack of blueprints and says, build this. Turns out it's a time machine. You follow the instructions, build it, and eventually become future you. Stepping back through the portal to hand off the plans to your past self seems neat until you ask, where did the instructions come from? They weren't invented by anyone, they're trapped in a loop, passed from one version of you to the next. No beginning, no source. This is the bootstrap paradox. Something exists, but its origin is missing. It doesn't violate the timeline, but it scrambles causality. Books, machines, even people, anything passed through time this way raises the same question. Can something exist without ever being created? It's a favorite trope in science fiction, and for good reason. It leaves your brain buzzing long after the story ends. Because if something can exist with no true beginning, what else can I do? Story 21. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object. What happens? Simple answer. They can't coexist. An unstoppable force requires infinite energy, literally converting all matter in the universe into motion. An immovable object requires infinite mass, sucking in every bit of energy to resist any push. If one exists, the other can't. The universe doesn't have the resources for both. Physics breaks down under the weight of the question. It's a paradox, but a theoretical one. A brain teaser, not a real problem, because nothing in our universe is truly unstoppable or immovable. Still, it lingers in debates, comics, and metaphysics, not because we expect a solution, but because it challenges our assumptions. It asks, what happens when two absolutes collide? Maybe the real answer is this: they don't, because the universe doesn't allow for such perfection. Or maybe if they did meet, the universe would have no choice but to reinvent the rules. Story 22. Consider this strange logic. Because Ukraine was once part of the Soviet Union, and before that, Tsarist Russia, some argue it's not a real country, but Ukraine has been independent since 1991, with its own government, borders, and identity. To many Ukrainians, their national history goes back even further, to Kievan Rus, a medieval state that was a cultural foundation for both Russia and Ukraine. Here's the paradox. Russia points to that shared origin to claim dominance, while Ukraine points to the same past to justify independence. If your identity comes from where you started, who decides how far back to look? Is it more logical to honor what came first or what came last? The conflict over territory becomes a conflict over history itself. And when both sides use the same facts to argue opposite conclusions, you're stuck in a paradox, one where identity and justification loop endlessly. Sometimes the past isn't a foundation, it's a weapon. Story 23. A man walks into a bar called Pop's Place. He orders vodka and tells a story. In 1945, a baby girl named Jane was left at an orphanage. No parents, no clues. She grows up lonely, desperate to know her origins. By 1963, she falls in love with a mysterious drifter who soon disappears. She gets pregnant. During childbirth, doctors discover she's intersex. To save her life, they perform surgery, and she becomes legally male. To make things worse, her baby is kidnapped. Broken and alone, Jane, now living as a man, drifts from town to town. Years pass. In 1970, he found himself in a bar. The bartender listens patiently, then offers him a shot at revenge against the drifter who left her. They travel back in time, and that's when it all clicks. The drifter Jane fell for was her future self. The baby she lost was also her. She is her own mother, her own father, And her own child? A perfect loop of identity, no beginning, no end, just one person, repeated across time. And the bartender, he knew all along, because he was Jane too.